In this short video, we'll discuss the biological explanations of behavior. By the end of the video, you should be able to identify examples for the different types of biological explanations so that you can complete the short assignment related to this video. So when we're discussing biological explanations of behavior, it's just like in Psych 101, where you learned about the different perspectives, maybe the learning perspective, the cognitive perspective, the sociocultural perspective, and the physiological perspective, among others. So when we're talking about psychobiology, we have these different ways of approaching biological explanations of behavior. So the first one is the physiological explanation. So a physiological explanation is going to relate the behavior to some sort of activity of the brain or other organisms. We might be talking about how changes in a neuron or an action potential or neurochemical changes or the anatomy of the brain affects the behavior. Now, in this short video, we're going to talk about the behavior of language. So an explanation might be that we know that Broca's area in the left hemisphere of the frontal lobe is important in language production, and that Wernicke's area, which is in the left temporal lobe, is important in language comprehension. So we're relating brain areas to a behavior. So the ontogenetic explanation describes the development of a structure or behavior. It's looking at how things interact to help a structure or a behavior develop. So we're going to talk about, again, continue on with language. And so it's easier to think about it in terms of birds. This is a zebrafinch in particular. And so we're going to look and see how does language in a bird, which would be their bird song, develop in terms of genes, maybe nutrition, experiences, and how the interaction of all of these together causes that behavior to develop. So these birds, they're hardwired to be able to produce birdsong, just like we're hardwired to produce language. However, they need certain experiences in order for that hardwiring to develop properly. So they have what's called a critical period. And this critical period between 20 and it looks like 60 days is when that zebrafinch, that young zebrafinch, needs to hear the adult male birdsong. If they hear it after or before, they'll never produce that adult male birdsong. So again, they have this critical period that even though they have the hard wiring, they need that experience to be able to produce it. So when you look at examples that I might give you for ontogenetic explanations, look for something where there's an interaction between genes and the environment. An evolutionary explanation reconstructs the evolutionary history of a behavior or a structure. For example, again, looking at language, we know that lower animal species make sounds to communicate, but they don't make the same speech-like sounds that we as humans have. Their communications don't seem to be quite as complex as what we have in human language. So one way of looking at that and how language has evolved would be to look at the structures of our voice box, our larynx and our pharynx, our tongue and all of those things, that our vocal cords, all those things that allow us to produce our speech-like sounds, and compare them to lower animal species. Well, one thing, this is just a comparison of a chimpanzee's vocal apparatus and our vocal apparatus. You can see there are definitely some changes that have occurred through evolution. And one of the things is that our tongue is rounded, and so this allows us to control our vocal cords more intricately than a chimpanzee. And chimpanzees have a much flatter tongue. So that's again how that behavior of language has evolved from non-human primates into us as human primates. The functional explanation is the why a structure or behavior evolved. So here, maybe again thinking about language, is that perhaps the reason that language developed, the why about how language developed, was for us to be able to hunt in groups and communicate more effectively and farm together.